Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Monday morning tennis rant. And some of you guys thought that there wasn't going to be any more tennis rants after the US Open, but you're wrong. The season after the US Open continues. There's important tournaments going on, but the general tennis audience kind of tunes out after the US Open. The interest for tennis declines once the US Open is over. But I find that very unfortunate because the rest of the season features some really incredible tournaments that are fun to watch. But I want to start this Monday morning rant off with something that I've been seeing on Twitter. And I'm on Twitter. I don't know if you are. This is where the conversations about tennis get really toxic. There's a lot of trolls. So I'm quite entertained by reading tennis Twitter. And players actually read tennis Twitter as well. If you want to find tennis players being active on social media, you're going to see them most active on Twitter. And this is one of the things that I enjoy seeing when tennis players, professional players, interact with the trolls. I see this on a constant basis. And the thing that's going on Twitter is the following. When Alcaraz was dominating the tour, when he was winning all the big tournaments, when he beat Djokovic in the final of Wimbledon, they were saying that Alcaraz is the next GOAT. There's no chance that he wasn't going to get the 30 Grand Slams, and it was inevitable that he is going to become the next GOAT. He's so much better than Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic combined. And now that he's been struggling, so to speak, which I'm going to explain why he's not, now they're saying that there's something wrong with Alcaraz. And I can tell you that there's absolutely nothing wrong with Alcaraz. He is going through the normal ups and downs that the big three go through as well. If you take a look at Nadal, he had slumps throughout the year, even the years when he won a couple of slams. Same with Federer, same with Djokovic, even though I will say to a lesser extent with Djokovic, he had some really dominant seasons. But it's impossible to be dominant throughout the entire tennis year. Alcaraz has had a phenomenal year. However, there is something going on with him. I remember vividly when I watched him play that exhibition at the Hoffman Cup. Alcaraz was smiling, he was happy. But then for whatever reason, when he came to North America and played the Masters in Canada, he played Cincinnati in the US Open, there was something about him where he seemed less happy to me. I didn't see him smile quite as much. And this continued with the last two tournaments that he played in Beijing and Shanghai. Of course, this is probably related to the results because he has unbelievable expectations on him. And unless he's winning a tournament, people are going to write negative things about him. So the problem is that players are affected by the media, and the media, forget the trolls, the media itself is toxic enough because it's the media that hypes a player up to levels that are unattainable, quite frankly. Because if you watch my Monday morning rant after Alcaraz won Wimbledon, when everybody was proclaiming that he's going to be the next GOAT, I basically said the same thing I'm saying now. Forget Nadal, forget Djokovic. There's going to be other players who are going to give Alcaraz a tough time on tour. There's going to be certain matchups that he's not going to like. Same with Federer, same with Nadal, and same with Djokovic. Those guys had players that they hated playing against. And what I've been observing is the following. Alcaraz doesn't like playing against Sinner. He lost to him 4 times. He beat him 3 times. Alcaraz plays a really close matches with Hurkacz, who was a great player. He just won Shanghai. It's his second Masters Series title. I think Hurkacz has the type of game with a big serve, with the great volleys. He can one year win Wimbledon. Alcaraz also, interestingly, has trouble with Tommy Paul. And there might be other players coming up that are going to give Alcaraz trouble. So you have to put into perspective how difficult it is to win a Master Series tournament. Forget a Grand Slam. So the fact that he made the finals in Cincinnati and he almost won, he made the semifinals at the US Open, those are phenomenal results. If you listen to Rafa, when Rafa reaches the semis, he treats that as a good result when we're talking about Grand Slams. So Alcaraz is going to be just fine. He is the best player out of the next gen. And if you watched one of my Monday morning rants a while back where I talked about the next big three, I still believe what I said then. The next big three are going to be Alcaraz, Sinner, and Rune. Sinner is playing better and better. He beat Alcaraz and Medvedev in Beijing, but then lost to Shelton in Shanghai, and Shelton is a phenomenal player. I talked about him many times. I think he has tremendous potential. Out of all the Americans, I think he has the biggest upside. Sinner also won the Masters in Toronto, but then interestingly lost early in the week after. So the only thing that Sinner is missing to be at the same level as Alcaraz is to have the consistency. Sinner needs to put together a whole month or a couple of months where he wins a lot of big titles consecutively or makes it to the semis or finals consecutively in tournaments. That's what the big three have done throughout the years, and that's what Sinner needs to do to be able to catch up with Alcaraz, despite the fact that he plays him really well and has a positive head-to-head against him. And now let's talk about Rune. And out of all the next gen players, Rune is my favorite. And I know that he's very polarizing. There's a lot of people that hate Rune. If you read the comment sections on Instagram or on Twitter, it's probably 75% against Rune. But I'm going to tell you why I like him, because he brings entertainment to the court. My favorite match this year, and this is going to come as a surprise to you, was the final in Munich when Rune beat Botik van den Zandschulp. That's a tough name to say. It wasn't a big tournament, it was a 250. And of course, it didn't have the quality of some of the other matches this year. The best two finals by far was the Cincinnati final between Djokovic and Alcaraz and the Wimbledon final between Djokovic and Alcaraz. Those were the best two matches level-wise. But as far as entertainment, I was glued to the television when I watched Rune beat van den Zandschulp in Munich. And I'm going to tell you why. Because Rune is so up and down in a match. To me, he is the hardest ball striker on tour. I don't think anybody can hit the ball as hard as Rune can. Even Alcaraz, I think Rune hits the ball harder than Alcaraz. But when it comes to the mental game, Rune is obviously up and down. And in this match, it looked like Rune was tanking. He was walking around like something was hurting. And I think that's why a lot of people don't like him, because he'll act like he's hurt, but then a game later he's running around like a maniac. So people believe that he's simulating injuries. In this match, there were so many ups and downs, and Rune was basically tanking the match away. Van den Zandschulp was serving for the match, had 2 match points, and then all of a sudden Rune turns it on and starts playing unbelievably and ends up winning that match 7-6 in the third. This was by far the most entertaining match of the year, and very similar to Nick Kyrgios, Rune is polarizing. There's going to be a lot of people that hate him, but he brings a lot of talent, a lot of potential to the table. Now, unfortunately, he's been playing terrible as of late. He had a great end to last year when he won the Paris Indoor Masters. He beat Djokovic. And then this year he's been playing very consistent, making the finals of Monte Carlo, making the finals of Rome, going into the quarters at slams. But I'm going to read you the results post-Wimbledon. So he lost in the second round of Toronto. He had a bye in the first round. He lost in the second round of Cincinnati. He had a bye in the first round. He lost in the first round of the US Open. Then he lost in the second round of Beijing. He did beat Auger Aliassime in the first round, who's also been losing a lot. And last week in Shanghai, Rune lost in the second round, 0-2 in Nakashima. So out of the last 5 tournaments, Rune has won 1 match against a guy who is struggling big time with confidence. And the last match that he played, he got 2 games. Now here's the good news for Rune. I just saw a post on Instagram that Boris Becker, one of the greatest players in the history of the game, is helping Rune. I think this is exactly what Rune needs. He needs a legend like Becker, a very authoritative figure, to teach him the nuances that are required to become the champion that he can be. And now let's transition to the women. You guys know that I'm a huge WTA fan. And recently, Maria Sharapova has been very active on social media, and she's been making some statements that I've made in the past. And recently she said that at the tournament in China that was going on for the women, the winner was getting 1/10 of the prize money compared to the men's tournament in China. So of course there might be a discrepancy at these tournaments based on whatever factors are considered for prize money. I understand that, but there can't be this much of a discrepancy. It's an insane discrepancy. And you have to understand that even when the tournaments are joint, the reason why women's tennis often gets overlooked is the following. When do the men play the final? They play the final on a Sunday, which, by the way, why was the Beijing final on a Wednesday? I don't care if it's a club championship final or the final of Wimbledon. Finals are held on a Sunday. Do not make the tennis calendar more confusing than it already is. But that's besides the point. Men play the final on a Sunday, women play the final on a Saturday. Also, the best male players always get better courts than the women. So those are some important factors why more people like men's tennis. But as I already said, a lot of people agree with me, is that the big male name players draw the big crowds. That's the best thing we have going for tennis. Alcaraz, Sinner, Djokovic, Medvedev, Rublev, Dimitrov, these are the type of guys that everybody wants to watch. This is the best thing that tennis has to offer. I'm not disagreeing with that. But just like Maria Sharapova said, there has to be an increase in prize money for the women because they're the #1 female sport in the world, and a lot of people enjoy watching women's tennis. I know some of you guys find that hard to believe, but people actually enjoy watching women's tennis, and in my opinion, they deserve to have their prize money increased outside the Grand Slams, because as you know, Grand Slams have equal prize money, but anywhere else on tour, there's an unbelievable discrepancy in prize money that is just not fair. And there were some really big tournaments after the US Open. Iga won a 1,000 in China. Even last week, there was some really interesting tournaments. For example, Leylah Fernandez, who is one of my favorite players. She's a lefty. I love watching lefties. She won a tournament in Hong Kong, and she's been struggling ever since reaching that final at the US Open, and now she's back in the top 50. She's going to be 43 in the world. She beat Siniakova in the final, who's also a great player, not only in singles but also in doubles. But another one of my favorite players who was always kind of under the radar and doesn't get the respect that she deserves is Jessica Pegula. And a really touching story, because she went to play the tournament in Seoul, Korea, and her mom is from Seoul, Korea, and she was left in front of a police station as a baby and then was adopted in the United States. So in 2019, Jessica took her mom back to Seoul for the first time, and this year she won the tournament in Seoul, which is a really nice thing to see. And one thing I can say about Pegula, she's one of the cleanest, one of the purest ball strikers on the WTA Tour. She's been playing super consistent this year, and I can see her winning some big titles in 2024. And guys, there probably will be a break with the Monday morning rants after the World Tour Finals, but I want to let you know that I have some really exciting content coming in 2023 on the Intuitive Tennis YouTube channel. Make sure that you subscribe if you haven't. Also on Wednesday, I have a video coming out that was requested by a lot of you guys on serve stances. I go into great detail on which stance you should use based on your level, and there's a lot of variations within each stance. So this is a video that you are going to get a lot of value out of.